Daniel is one of the leading experts on the Zohar, which is the main work of Jewish mysticism. And for the last few years, Daniel and I have been talking about your work, Robert, and we found some interesting parallels between your ideas and ideas in the Zohar. So we thought it'd be fun if we chat with you about it. And so, Danny, you can kick us off.
Sure. I guess the first thing to say is it'd be easy to find conflicts between Kabbalah, Zohar, Judaism, and Robert's teaching. Because the Zohar, even though it's very radical and mystical, it's at the same time traditional and deeply rooted in Judaism. But there are some interesting things there that I think could resonate with Robert and his teachings. So I'll just mention a couple. First is, I think the most interesting is some of the names that it invents for God. I think it's trying to get beyond the personal God, beyond the notion that someone up there is running the show. So one of its new names for God is Ein Sof, the infinite or infinity. And another, I think, even more intriguing is Ayin. You could spell it Ayin, nothing, nothingness. So God is the no thingness. You could say the energy that animates life, not someone up there, but this pulsating energy, the aliveness. And I guess the most interesting parallel is not in Zohar itself, but in Hasidism. Hasidism is really a later popularization of the Kabbalah. And there you have the teaching that God should be reimagined as aliveness. And I know that's one of your favorite words, Robert, and I love what you teach about that we should just, celebrate the aliveness. So the Hebrew for that is chiyut, like, chai, chayim, lachayim. So chiyut is life energy or aliveness. And Hasidism, one Hasidic teacher says God is aliveness. Now, of course, it would be better, you might say, I'm sure from your perspective, Robert, just to do away with all the God language completely. And I have a lot of sympathy with that. But I think about as far as the mystics will go is to reimagine God as something other than the traditional Father in heaven kind of thing.
I like the word aliveness because I think that whatever we think about philosophically, whatever we make of life philosophically, whether it's religion or atheism or anything in between, the aliveness is really difficult to deny. It's our most intimate experience. Whatever I am, I certainly feel that I'm a living animal here on the earth. And I don't see any way of denying that, although I know there are people who try to deny that, say we're just dreaming this and human bodies don't really exist and all that stuff. That's possible. I'm in no position to prove it wrong, but it's not something that I ever think about unless someone says it to me and kind of forces me to consider it. Because my approach is naturalistic. I feel like I'm a human animal and I'm here on the earth with a lot of other living beings of all kinds, from tiny bacteria that are living in my body with me and other small creatures, and then creatures that are larger than I am and maybe have a bigger brain, like a whale. And I don't know where human beings fit into that exactly. And I'm not really trying to find out. My experience is about living and participating in this moment without trying to understand the big picture. So this has been interesting for me, Daniel, because for some reason people imagine that I have some kind of inside knowledge about all of this. It may have to do with things I've said and written. I'm not sure, but I actually don't have any inside information about any of it. Zero. So you mentioned my teachings, but I really have nothing to teach except that I'm here now, and I find it satisfactory without needing to speculate on any greater meaning or cosmology or any of that. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. I often hear you say that you're not really teaching anything, and I have respect for that, but I think you are helpful to many people, and I think sometimes you formulate it that you can create an opening, or you can help someone be open to the discovery, and then of course the discovery has to be on our own. You can't enlighten someone. All you can do is, Krishnamurti has this phrase, all you can do is open the window, maybe, and then it's up to you. But I think you are a great teacher despite yourself. And many people want to read or listen to you because it helps them. So I think it's kind of you're conveying a certain wisdom, and it's all the more effective because you're not wedded to an ideology.
Well, I don't have an ideology. That's just plain truth. As I say, I tend toward naturalism, which is the
Mm,
idea that all of this can be here without any supernatural factors necessary to explain it.
right, right.
But I don't know that. There may be something supernatural that I can't see or perceive that's behind
Mm,
all this. And I just wouldn't have any way to know that. And I guess if I have anything to teach, I guess it's doubt and skepticism.
mm,
Um,
right.
because I don't think that just I can't know about final matters, but I don't think anyone else can either. And I think
Right.
maybe that's a kind of a big statement that some people benefit from hearing. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree totally. 99% of what spiritual teachers say is based on tradition, not on their own awareness. There's a great line in the Talmud, teach your tongue to say, I don't know. So I think that's a good thing to follow.
Yes, I think so. It's helpful, really helpful. I say it a lot. I find myself saying that very often to myself and to other people too.
Yeah.
There's so much that I don't know. What I know is very tiny. It's very small, and it's mostly personal. It's about me
Yeah.
and my life and the facts of my ordinary existence. But a bigger understanding of the universe or whatever I feel is just beyond us. We're we're
Hmm.
we're here, and um, if we go into a critique of knowledge, how could we epistemology? How could we ever know anything? And start there. It opens up a lot of really interesting uh,
Yeah.
prospects for just thinking about all of this. In one sense, all that we really know or can know is our perceptions. I mean, we have no other source of information. When someone speaks, let's say discusses God, we can hear that, but
Hmm.
we're perceiving it. And how we perceive it is one's own perceptions, one's own mind. So if someone actually had capital T truth to impart, I don't believe anyone does, but imagine that someone did and then
Hmm.
spoke it to me. I would only perceive it the way I perceive it through my own mind, through the filter of my own mind. So, in a sense,
Right.
we're actually stuck within our own being, our own mind. and have no way of demonstrating to ourselves that anything else even exists, much less that there's a truth about everything. So I would say I'm a radical skeptic.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree totally. But I think also, once you're aware, if you're aware that you're so limited, if you're aware that, you're seeing it in your own narrow perspective, then there's some chance that something new will enter, that you'll discover something.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Krishnamurti, and that was what he was always encouraging people to do, to get beyond the known, as he would
Right.
express that. We have to,
Right.
yes, because well, in psychology, there's what's called the confirmation bias, and this is a fact of all human minds.
Yeah.
We are more open to things that can support or verify what we already believe and want to believe. And we're much more resistant to ideas that challenge what we already believe.
Mm.
So, in a sense, our gathering of information is biased to begin with, and it just gets worse and worse. It just piles up. Unless someone makes a concerted effort, which I have done, to doubt oneself and one's own thoughts and one's own beliefs, radically doubt it to the point where you say to yourself, Robert, you don't actually know anything about this. You have all these beliefs, you heard them somewhere. The ones that appealed to you became your point of view, and the ones that didn't appeal to you, it's like the American politics thing that's going on right now, where there's these two silos, and there's actually very little communication between the two of them. That's the situation. These people, both on the right and the left, are really lost in kind of a fantasy of politics, whereas the actual work of politics would take place if those points of view all came together in the same space and communicated. But what we have now is just a radical split down the middle and no communication at all, just hatred and
Yeah.
yes. Well, that can happen to a human being too, like the religious person who's deeply religious. And I respect that. I don't feel a disrespect for religion. I think it serves a purpose psychologically. It has helped many people to cohere and to find meaning in their lives, and it's important to cohere. There are other people, I think I'm one of them, who don't need that kind of input to cohere. That doesn't mean that my point of view is superior to the religious point of view. I would never say that. I mean, to each his own, whatever gets you through the night. We all have weaknesses that need protection. And as a psychologist, I understand that the first commandment is thou shalt cohere psychologically. Otherwise, you'll be mad. You'll be psychotic. So,
Right.
if the idea that God is watching me and aiding me, and I can pray to God when I'm feeling too stressed to deal with things, if that helps someone cohere, great. I would never I think that's a crutch, but I would never kick that crutch out because I have my own crutches, and I probably don't know what some of them are, and my friends won't tell me. So,
Could you speculate or identify one of your crutches?
I guess not so easily. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Sure.
It,
Sure.
there, I think if someone, well, let's take one of my books. Someone could read, depending on no thing, and find biases in there that I might not recognize. And at the end of the book, say, well, Robert's a good writer and he has some good ideas, but he seems to think that, and then you fill in the blank. And he's so sure that such and such. See, I wouldn't even know that because some of my ideas are so ingrained and I've had them for so long that even though I try to call my ideas into question, I can't quite do it.
Mm.
Um, it the spiritual teachers talk about this state of total emptiness. And I don't believe I've ever been in such a state.
Mm.
If I have, I can't remember it. It's not
Right.
it's not really like that for me. That there's a time when I don't exist at all, which is
Mm.
the claim. That's the claim of enlightenment. You see that you're nothing. Yes, you're
Right.
nothing. You don't exist.
Right.
That's a pretty hard one to verify. I don't know
Yeah.
who would be doing the verification.
Yeah. There's a great Jewish joke that on Yom Kippur, the rabbi goes in front of the ark and says, "God, I'm nothing. I'm absolutely nothing." And the cantor sees the rabbi is doing that. He also goes. He chants and sings, says, "God, I'm nothing. I'm nothing." And then some simple guy in the back of the synagogue says, "God, I'm nothing. I'm nothing." And the cantor leans over to the rabbi and says, "Look who thinks he's nothing."
I've heard that one. That's very good.
So
No,
that ego, it's like ego. It's just so interesting. Ego, as you say, that the goal in so much of mysticism is to dissolve the ego. But as you've said, in your writing and your teaching, the ego is there. It's part of that aliveness. You don't want to get carried away with it, but if you put a lot of effort into dissolving it, then that's ego too. So
well,
it's a puzzle.
yeah. What we call ego is is a human. It's the name for something in humans that other animals also have, but we don't call it ego when one donkey pushes the other one out of the way to get at the food. We don't
Hmm.
call that ego. That's just natural.
Right.
That's what donkeys do. Well, then we're so judgmental, self-judgmental
Mm.
to to
Right.
feel that somehow we should be above it all and have no desires and somehow just be kind and sweet all the time. For me, that doesn't work. To really participate in life, you have to be willing to not always do the right thing, to be perhaps
Mm.
hurtful to others and selfish and greedy from time to time. Who knows? I mean, it's not that I'm recommending greed. That's not the point. But if it comes
Yeah.
up and I see it in myself, I'm not one of these people that gets the eraser out and tries to, you know,
Right.
eliminate that. You see it and it's not pretty and you just notice it, but you can't throw it out. And where are you going to put it?
Robert, speaking of ego, you've talked about ego in your books and in some of your videos, and that dream you had or around the time of your big awakening, it was related to ego. So, how, in your experience, how does the ego change when you gain an awakened perspective?
Well, assuming I have an awakened perspective,
Mhm.
um, that's different from others, which may or may not be the case. Truly, I'm not saying that as some kind of artful intervention or something. I really believe um, that we're all somehow awake, and some of us notice it more acutely, um, and then get a kind of remove from what you're calling the ego. It's more like this. I have my likes and dislikes, but I don't think that they're more important than anyone else's. What I feel is what all of us feel. We want to be here. We want the things that we need to survive. We want to feel competent to as humans. I don't think those things go away when you have an awakening. It's just that you don't feel that must be maintained all the time. You're willing to just let it be what it is, not have to be. That was the dream. See, in that dream, this big structure is moldering away. It's like a hotel with thousands of rooms, and it's held together with this system of buttresses and supports. and I'm sailing away from it. And when I look back over my shoulder and see it there, I know in the dream that's the ego. And the idea is not that it goes away, but that it doesn't need constant maintenance. You don't have to be taking care of it all the time. And self-esteem and all of this is, I just take that for granted. And
Right. Because you've mentioned in your books that the idea of basically just not putting that much attention on yourself. You know, you're flowing along with the rest of the universe, and you know you're here. But I get the sense that you're saying, in the awakened perspective, you're just not putting as much attention on yourself as one would before awakening.
well, I'm not putting any attention on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that it disappears, but I don't think about it. I think about what I'm doing, not who's Robert, is Robert any good, or all of these things that seem to hang people up so much. Actually, when the Dalai Lama came to the States for the first time, he said, all these people are so concerned about self-esteem. And he said, we never even think about that. And that's what I'm saying. You know, we all have a kind of inherent narcissism that's just natural. It's a natural part of growing up. And you don't need to make that go away. Just see that everyone else has it too. And that it's not like this special quality that you have that needs to be buffed up and presented to the world so that people will tell you how great you are. I mean, that's, I said, did an interview a couple of days ago, and this came up in that interview. And I thought what I said there was pretty good on this. What we really need is not to be admired. That's a secondhand, that's a kind of a narcissistic wound that's manifesting. What we really need, I think, is to feel competent, not to have other people admire us. I think we only want the admiration because we lack competence, or we lack the belief in our own competence. If I know that I'm competent, I don't need anyone else to tell me that. And that's my experience. I know that I'm good with a camera. If I show some photographs and people say, these are just lovely, I enjoy hearing that, but I don't need anyone to tell me that. I can go out with the camera and just enjoy using it. And that's what I'm calling an awakened view, where you're living, and that's the joy. Not the joy is in the living, not in what people tell you about yourself or what you tell yourself about yourself. That's already secondhand, and it's driven by a kind of wound, a very early wound that we all, in my view, sustain as children. And we spend a lot of time and energy trying to grow out of it and cover it up and heal it and all that. And I just came to the point where that wasn't necessary. I just didn't need to work on myself anymore or have anybody tell me I was okay. And that just all went away. And it's never come back. So I feel free.
Does that relate to the psychological idea of inner directed versus outer directed?
I think in a tenuous way, because, well, I won't go into it. I'm not sure. I don't know the right answer to that. What I'm talking about is more of a direct experience, not about inner and outer, but just this doesn't need any improvement. Robert is what he is. And a moment from now, he'll be something else. And it's not a self-improvement story here, or a detective story where you figure it all out. It's just being here now and doing the best I can in this instant, without concern about what might happen next, what I have to prepare for, and what I did wrong yesterday and all of that. I'm not there. I mean, those thoughts may arise, but if they do, they don't capture my attention. They just pass along with the rest of the thoughts. I feel like I'm, say, driving a car and I'm stationary and the scenery is passing through me. And it doesn't stay there. It keeps moving. And if a sad thought comes up, it does. If a happy thought comes up, it does. And I don't feel compelled to cling to any of it or deal with it in some special way. And that's what I mean by awake, just letting it all happen as it must. Well, must is that's now we're talking about determinism and all of that, which is a very big question. But things happen as they do.
One question I had here relates to that. One of your main themes, like you said, is just be who you are right now without trying to become something better or more evolved. But how does that relate to the analogy you like about the caterpillar becoming a butterfly?
Well, the caterpillar doesn't have to try to become a butterfly. That's its essence. That's what happens. That's determined when you are born as a worm, as a caterpillar. You come out. You're this tiny thing. I've observed this, and you're on a milkweed plant because that's where your mom laid the eggs. Being a conscious butterfly, she knew where to lay them. And when you hatch, you are crawling around on your food source and you're very hungry. So you keep eating that. And soon you go to sleep. You weave yourself into a cocoon and you go to sleep. And when you wake up, you have wings and you didn't do anything. You didn't decide to become a butterfly. You didn't go to butterfly training school, butterfly ground school. You didn't go to the spiritual teacher to be advised on how to change your mind around so that you will become more butterfly-like or anything like that. It just happened. That's how I view my own evolution or my own being.
Right. So all the folks who go on for years trying to become awake or enlightened, that analogy gives a good angle on that, I think.
Well, I think that's something I have been expressing for years. And I think a lot of people have gravitated to that who are coming to the end of their journey anyway. And hearing from me is the last little boop that opened the door. It's not as if I have that to teach. It's that somebody is just on the verge of saying, maybe I don't need to stare at the wall for 9 hours a day and chant. Maybe I can have a girlfriend and have a beer at the end of the day or something instead and still be okay. And I say, right, you can do that. And they go, wow, thank you so much, Robert. You were brilliant. No, I wasn't. See, I just encourage people to live. Have a good time. You soon be old and sick. It's true. That's what the Buddha taught years and years and years ago, old age, illness, and death. And if we embrace that, then we really come alive. That's a paradox.
But Robert, wouldn't you say that it was an improvement in your life going from unawakened to awakened?
Of course. But what I'm saying is seeking that will not get you there.
Sure.
At all. I know people for years who are on these paths and they're serious seekers and they're so serious and I feel a kind of sadness sometimes when I speak with them because it's like they're living with their teeth clenched and they're trying to I mustn't have these sexual thoughts. They're not they're not compatible with enlightenment or whatever it is, and they just
But it seems to me that there's some things that could promote the awakening and some things that could prevent it. Maybe, to start with the doubt, which you spoke about and I agree with totally. doubt and skepticism about what you've been taught, about all the indoctrination, maybe that can at least increase the chances of awakening.
Maybe. I'm not in a position to judge that because the counterfactual is not available to us. We only know what actually happens. We don't know what would have happened if I didn't go to the spiritual teacher. See, what happens is someone sits at Krishnamurti's meetings for a year or two, and then they have
Right.
an awakening, and they'll say, listening to Mr. Krishnamurti really helped me. It opened my mind. That may be,
Right.
but we don't know what that person would have been without going to Krishnamurti. Maybe something even better. We just don't know. I mean, things just are as they are. I really don't want to. I don't want to open the door to having the things that I say regarded as teaching, and if someone could only accept them, then they would be awake. That's not true. Being awake is a mysterious event, and it did happen to me. It took me a few years to accept that it happened to me. I was filled with concern that maybe I was on this big ego trip and I'd heard about awakening, and now suddenly Shazam, Robert's awake or whatever. And it took several years before I was able to understand, yeah, this is an ordinary thing. It's happened to a lot of people.
Right.
Some of them were great people that we remember because they were so bright and expressed it in such fine terms that understand. Some of them were just anonymous people.
Right.
And now I'm among that group of people, but that doesn't suddenly make you an authority on anything at all. See, one of my main critiques of spirituality is these people who say they're awake, and maybe some of them are, I don't know, hard to judge. But you ask them any question and they're ready to opine, and they've got all the answers, and they hardly ever say, I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm not an expert on such. There's a guy called the Sadhguru. Sadhguru. Did you ever hear about this guy? He's on the internet.
No.
He dresses up in this costume and has the Indian accent and everything. And he takes questions, and there are all kinds of questions about health and politics and all this. And he just knows everything. And he speaks as if he's just 100% sure that everything is golden. And it's just crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes I've denied that I have something to teach because I don't want to be seen in that light. Because if I do have something to teach, it's really small and it's based on personal experience, and it might not be applicable to humanity at large. I just don't know that. It's my
your awareness of the importance of doubting. Would you say that you had that for a good amount of time before the awakening, or did that come out of the awakening?
Since childhood.
So it seems to me that was part of whatever mysterious process, unknowable process that led to your awakening.
Well, that's how it happened for me, but that's the point. Someone else might be a devotee of God and meditate and try to see the universe as divine creation or something, and have the same kind of experience where you see your lack of importance and the world becomes very transparent and large, and you're I just don't know that. I can't rule it out. I don't think there's one way. We're all different psychologically. I've been doing this for a long time now. That's the strange thing, because when I started out talking this way, It was after I retired from doing psychotherapy, I felt free to speak finally. When I was doing my practice, I really didn't want to be anything special. I had a different appearance then. I had my hair cut in a reasonable way, and all this. But once this started up, I just kind of let the chips fall, and I said some really outrageous things, actually. I've kind of backed off from some of them. And more, I'm feeling that I don't want to be seen as a paragon of wisdom or something. I do have some ordinary wisdom. I'll admit to that. And I know something about psychology and philosophy. Both of those are useful in understanding the human condition. That's all true. But that really doesn't make me this light giver. It's not that way. I'm not Mercury coming down from heaven. Truly.
Yeah, but how many people write 2 books that can keep somebody like me entertained for 7 years reading it over and over?
You're a sad case. What can I say?
No, what I love is all the people who, have been to this or that guru and, tried this or that system, and they're so there's real breakthrough when they read something of yours, and you can feel the gratitude and the thrill of discovery when they realize there's something simpler and deeper, and that's wonderful.
Well, thank you. And see, that I will cop to that. I know that I have that function. And let's say the function is called giving permission.
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I can do that. I can say to someone, you don't really have to finish that path. You've walked it for quite a while now. You could step off the path and walk on the grass for a while. You don't have to stay on the pavement. I can do that, and that's helpful to a lot of people. I understand that, but that's not really a teaching. It's just encouragement to think for yourself and not you understand that there may be experts in all fields, but there's no expert on how to be you. There can't be, because they don't know who you are. They don't know what your parents said to you that hurt you, and now you have to try to make it right, and all these other things that we all have and that drive us. And
no, those go together. I think I have a little slip of paper that I keep on my desk. Think for yourself and question authority. I think it's from the great Rabbi Timothy Leary.
Yeah,
So it's good advice.
this is a pleasure. Happy to speak with both of you.
Good.
I don't know if we might be getting to the end of our points here, but there are 2 things I'll bring up that might be related. You've talked about most of us being hypnotized and most of us having blinders on, and those 2 things might be related. What would you say we are blind to, and what would you say many of us have been hypnotized to believe?
Well, the hypnotic trance tells you that you're not okay as you are. No matter what you attain, it's not good enough. I know this as a fact because I've treated some people in psychotherapy who were amazingly, what's the word? They had attained a great deal. They were important, wealthy, beautiful looking people. And they were in psychotherapy because they were frightened and miserable. So I think we can learn from that it's not attainment that's going to make us okay. it's snapping out of this trance where we've been told so often that we're not okay. We need deodorant because we smell bad, for example. Is that really true? I don't have any underarm deodorant. I never have owned any of that stuff, and I don't want any. But people spend a lot of money on that stuff because they really believe they stink. And that's not my really experience of people. Yeah, some people don't smell that good, but most people smell fine. And this is an example. That's just the kind of hypnosis. That one is done for money, to sell the product. But the basic trance is that now is insufficient. And then you get into the next now, and that one's insufficient. And you try to make the following one sufficient, but it isn't. And it's like, I think this was Alan Watts who talked about this. You buy a new car, and it's wonderful. The first few miles you're driving around and you feel just great, and you enjoy it for a while, and then the new car smell wears off and mechanical problems start to occur, and you're now spending money on this thing, and all of a sudden it's just not that much fun to drive it anymore. And that's what attainment is like. It might feel good for a moment or at first or whatever, but you can't sustain those feelings. You can't sustain any feeling. That's what I mean by this hypnotic trance. The idea that you'll get into a situation where everything is okay perpetually, and there'll never be any more fears and pain and suffering and all of this. And I think that's what a lot of people imagine enlightenment is like, or awakening. They'll get into this position where there's no more doubt, no more fear, no more anguish, none of it. That's not my experience. My experience is those things are still present, but you don't fixate on them. They're passing. They're part of the passing parade. They're part of that. That's life. Life has its ups and downs, and that's where we are. And when we can kind of ride the wave like that, things are a lot easier. A lot easier. And that's not my wisdom. That's just wisdom. It's not like Robert knows that and no one else does. Everybody really knows it. It's just for some people, it's hard. It's hard to do. Mm-hmm. Hard to just let things occur. That's called wu wei. Just non-action. You just don't have to fix everything.
Great. And regarding the blinders, there's this idea that the way we've evolved is, for humans to succeed and live long enough to have progeny, they got to focus on the essentials. And so we have these kind of built-in blinders not to see things that aren't necessary for that. Do you agree with that idea?
Well, I think that let's assume that naturalism is correct and intelligence evolved from lower creatures. It evolved to where human intelligence is now. We'll just assume that. That's how I see it, but I can't prove it. Assume that happened. Before human beings evolved to this state that we're in now, the lower animals were all here, but they couldn't speak to one another. They couldn't formulate ideas and pass them on from person to person. So their evolution was mediated by geology, the weather, biology, and those were the forces. Now we humans are in a different situation entirely because we're swimming around in a sea of ideas, and those ideas affect our evolution and what we do with ourselves. And I think this is an idea from the 20th century, from Teilhard du Jardin, philosopher called it the oosphere. It's the sphere of ideas, human ideas. So that's what we're subject to. And just because an idea exists and is popular doesn't mean it's correct or helpful. Not by a long shot. We're swimming around in a sea of ideas. Some of them may be helpful and others may be pernicious. And I think that's what we're dealing with. I think I got off the track of your question because it's,
Yeah, well, the blinders, yeah, well, I was talking about evolution, so you talked about that, and the you said we have blinders, most of us have blinders on, and what would be an example or two of something we're blinded to?
an example of something we're blinded to.
Mhm.
Wow, I can make a list. I can start today and finish next week. We're blind when we don't understand that the other people in this world are just like us, in the sense that they need the same things that we need. They need a safe place to sleep. They need food. They need water. If they can get those things, then they need companionship and affection and sex and a feeling of competence. And we're always judging others as if they weren't like us. There's something wrong with them for wanting those things. But when I want them, then that's normal. That's my life. Of course, I should have all these great things, but that doesn't mean that this guy in the ghetto needs them also. He has to work for a living, and this is what we have going on in American politics now. That's so despicable. This idea that there's a privileged class and they get what they want, and the rest of the people are just there to do the work. It's horrible. And that's a form of blindness, to not see that everyone is just like you. Essentially, there are of course differences, but the differences are small, and the shared necessities are most of the pie. That's an example. Yes.
Great. Danny, did you have anything else?
Sorry, another one is lack of self-compassion.
Mhm.
It's very strange that people don't understand that they need to be kind to themselves. I mean, I've actually had to convince therapy patients that they were too hard on themselves. Why should you be hard on yourself? For what? What will that do for you? Why should you ever tell yourself that you're no good? I mean, why would anybody think that that's a good idea? That's an example. It's a part of the hypnotic trance of self-judgment, of needing the main idea is I'm not okay as I am right now. I have to become okay, and I may need to, I don't know what it is, start doing sit-ups and push-ups every afternoon until I get my body in shape, then I'll be okay.
Yeah. But what if somebody's really despicable? What if, someone's really hurting people, you know, inflicting pain? Then I think, it is useful for that person to reflect on himself a little.
Well, but the people who are that way are the ones who are least likely to reflect on it.
Sure, sure. But I mean, it would be good for that person to realize he's not okay, or for someone to show him that.
Let's take a perfect example. How will Donald Trump come to feel that he's not okay? Impossible.
He probably couldn't, even if he's sentenced, and even if he loses in a couple of days and is sentenced in a couple of days, he probably wouldn't.
Oh, from your mouth to God's ear. I have got to tell you, I'm feeling such anxiety about this election. It's more anxiety than I normally feel.
Yeah.
I realize this is very close to my heart. Not Donald Trump in particular. I mean, he's a nasty character, and if he fell down a flight of stairs tomorrow, I'd be happy, actually. But not him specifically. But the idea, it's so sad that half the public is willing to elect a king.
Amazing. Amazing.
It's right. It's hard for me to believe it. I don't know what to make of it.
Amazing.
They actually want to vote for someone who will
Yeah.
have the power to kill them if he wants to.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, it's
Amazing.
yeah.
One last question for me, Robert. You're talking about, the hypnotic trance. That kind of implies like a master hypnotist hypnotizing us. So what's your take on the source of this hypnosis?
It's the difference between what is good for the culture and what is good for the individual.
Mm-hmm.
Culturally, tribally, the tribe needs to function.
Mhm.
It has to have its members towing the line, whatever the direction that the tribe wants to take. They're going to induce a state of blindness in people so that they carry out difficult tasks without complaining. And when we become truly individuated, which is another word for awakening, when truly individuated, you value yourself extremely highly. Not that you're better than others, that's not the point, but that this is a great opportunity. You're alive and you're paying a tremendous price to be alive. It's a very expensive ticket. It's filled with pain and suffering. And in order to enjoy that, you have to understand that this experience is valuable and that participating in it is a gift, not that you've been given, and it doesn't last forever. It's here now, and it's just always here now as long as it is. And not to be distracted, not to imagine that you have some great purpose to achieve, but just that you can participate. If you think you have this great purpose, you won't participate freely. You'll be trying and striving to produce something. That's not necessary. It really isn't. To be alive it's not necessary to attain greatness at all. It's not necessary. That's part of the hypnotic trance, this idea that everyone has to be great. No, you don't. All you have to do is be what you are, what you already are. I think that was Ramana Maharshi said that. He said, what you are, you already are. That's what he said about striving, about spiritual ambition. He said, no, what you are, you already are. This is it. That's the one thing that I really have to tell people that might be a teaching. This is it. Whatever you think it is, whatever you think about God or consciousness or whatever, that's all fine. We all have all kinds of ideas. Nobody knows what about any of that. Nobody really knows. We have ideas. But whatever your ideas are, it's undeniable that this is it. This right now is the only experience there ever was. Because in the next now, this now is gone. And it can't come back again. And the now and the future, we haven't gotten to it yet. And although we might try to imagine it, the imagination will be wrong. Because when we get to that now, it won't be the way we imagined. It never is. So all we really have that we can hold on to for the moment is this right now. And then that dies. It just passes and a new now comes. And the wise among us are there. If they're eating something, they taste it. If they're out with a camera, they really photograph something. They're not just, I mean, now I see these people now with the phones, they're just photographing everything, their lunch, the park bench they want to sit on, as if that's going to somehow You know, what I'm saying is we have this, now I feel like I'm preaching, but I guess I'm old enough to do it. I'll be 80s. Um, we have this opportunity, but it doesn't last forever. And while it's here, I say embrace it. Just be the way you are. Don't try to improve it, live it. Maybe it will improve. You don't know. I have spoken. Yes, it's terrible. That's why I resist the spiritual teacher thing, because it's too easy for me to get on that. It's just too easy. I had a certain kind of awakening. Fortunately, I resisted back then. This was like 35 years ago. I almost got on the soapbox when it occurred, but I didn't. And that's when I switched into psychotherapy, because I felt I do have an understanding. I have something here that can serve, but not teaching awakening, but using an awakened perspective to help other people with their difficulties. And that's what I'm really trying to do now. And I don't want to be misunderstood as if I have this vast understanding to impart, because I as I said at the beginning, I don't. When I look at myself, I'm just an ordinary guy. I get up in the morning and have to deal with life.
It's a good message.
Thank you. It's really enjoyable speaking with both of you. David, I've spoken with a lot, of course.
Yeah. No, it's great.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. So thanks to both of you.
Yeah. One last thing. Let me just close with this, that of the various names for God, one of the most beautiful is the Hebrew word Zot, which means this. God is this.
I feel a tremendous reverence, but I don't know for what.
Well, you often talk about just the gratitude for the aliveness.
Yeah, I feel tremendously grateful to have been given this opportunity.
Yeah.
It doesn't amount to anything, in my view. I mean, you live and then you die, and everything that you were disappears, disintegrates. So it's not about attaining. It's about experiencing love and compassion and all these finer things that
Right.
that the fortunate among us, we have our antenna out for them. We feel them. I have 3 donkeys, pets, and those donkeys love me so much, and I love them. When they see me, they get all excited, and I go over and hold them, and it's fantastic. You know, it's a beautiful moment. It's just a beautiful moment. That's all you can get, in my view. That's as good as it gets.
Yeah. Amen.